In a quiet town surrounded by hills and rivers, there stood a wall. It was just an ordinary wall made of red bricks, rough with time, with patches of moss growing where rainwater liked to stay. People walked by it every day on their way to work, school, or the market, but no one ever paid attention to it. The wall was part of an old building near the bus stop. Some said the building used to be a bakery. Others thought it had once been a library. Now, it was empty, and the wall stood silently, watching the world pass by. 12-year-old Minna passed the wall every morning. She always walked quickly, eyes on the road, books hugged close to her chest. Her shoes clicked against the pavement, and the wall stayed silent. One day, as Minna walked to school, she noticed something different. A piece of paper had been stuck to the wall. It wasn't big, just a little square taped in the middle of the bricks. Curious, she stopped. The paper read, "Leave what you don't need. Take what you do. Kindness grows here." Minna blinked. What did that mean? She looked around. No one else was stopping. Cars passed. Bicycles zipped by. The wall remained quiet, feeling a bit shy. Minna smiled at the strange message and continued on her way. That night, she told her grandmother about the paper. Her grandmother smiled. "That sounds like a wall of kindness," she said, pouring Minna some warm tea. "A wall of kindness?" "Yes. People leave things they don't need, like clothes or books, for others who might need them. It's a beautiful thing." Minna's eyes widened. That old wall, even old things can have new purpose, her grandmother said. The next morning, Minna couldn't stop thinking about the wall. The next morning, the first rays of the sun spilled over the rooftops of the small town, casting a golden hue over the square where the wall stood. Sonvi arrived early, holding a box of brushes and paint. Her younger brother Arjun tagged along, his eyes still sleepy but sparkling with curiosity. "You're really doing it?" he asked, looking at the bare, aging wall. Sonvi nodded. "It starts today." She dipped a brush into bright blue paint and made the first stroke. It wasn't just a color, it was a commitment, a promise. As the strokes flowed, curious eyes peeked from nearby houses. Children paused their cricket game. Shopkeepers leaned out of their doors. The community was watching. Soon, others joined. A retired school teacher named Mr. Day brought his own set of brushes. A college student named Mira offered to sketch outlines. Within hours, what was once a dull, forgotten structure began to bloom with color and life. Sonvi had painted a tree in the center of the wall, but instead of leaves, it had hands, each one different in size and color, stretching outward. At the base, they painted a simple message in 3 languages. Take what you need. Leave what you can. It wasn't long before the first item appeared beneath the painted tree. A worn scarf folded neatly, placed by a shy elderly woman, then a bag of rice, then a pair of shoes. People began to understand. By evening, the wall was no longer just a mural. It was a movement. Within just a week, the painted wall had become more than a backdrop. It had become a whispering wall. Not because it spoke in sound, but because it carried stories. Every item left beneath it was a whisper from someone's life, a pair of tiny shoes from a mother whose child had outgrown them, a can of lentils from a man who once went hungry, a sweater carefully folded by a girl who had sewn the buttons back on just the night before. Sonvi watched in quiet awe. She never imagined how far the idea would reach. Every morning, people came and stood before the wall. Some dropped off items and left quickly, not wanting to be seen. Others stood longer, touching the mural gently, reading the message again as if it were the first time. Still others came simply to help organize the growing piles of donations, tying up bundles of clothes, writing labels, arranging things neatly. And then came the notes, folded into jacket pockets, taped to food boxes. Tucked into the edges of the mural, notes began appearing from those who received. Some were shy thank yous. Others told short stories. I wore these shoes to my first job interview. Thank you for the opportunity. I didn't know strangers could be this kind. I'm going to try and be a better person because of you. This food saved my week. You have no idea. One day, a small envelope was taped beneath the tree's painted roots. It simply read, "For Sonvi." Inside was a drawing hand-sketched by a child in crayon. It showed a girl painting a wall, surrounded by colorful people holding hands. On the back were for words, "You changed my life." Sonvi sat down on the curb and wept, not out of sadness, but out of something deeper, a mix of joy, disbelief, and a sense of purpose far greater than she'd ever known. That evening, as she sat beneath the mural with her brother and a few neighbors, a quiet breeze passed through, lifting a corner of a note taped to the wall. I think the wall is whispering, Arjun said softly, and maybe it was, because kindness, once given, never stays silent for long. As the sun rose higher each day, casting golden light on the painted wall, the story of the wall of kindness began to ripple outward from the neighborhood. News spread through word of mouth, local community blogs, and even social media posts shared by visiting students and tourists. What started as a simple wall with painted flowers, handprints, and hopeful words began to spark a quiet revolution of compassion. Mrs. Navarro, the art teacher who helped guide the students in the early days of the wall, couldn't help but marvel at the unexpected momentum. Every morning before school, she'd walk past the wall to see what new items had been left or taken. Scarves hung neatly beside old winter coats. Sandwiches in clean lunch bags rested on the ledge for anyone who might need a meal. Notes in different languages began appearing with small messages. Take what you need. No one should go hungry. From one heart to another. It was clear now that the project had grown beyond the original classroom. One rainy afternoon, as grey clouds soaked the streets, a man named Rajiv stood before the wall. His clothes were damp, and his expression was tired. He had come from another part of the city, having heard about the wall of kindness from someone he met at the train station. He was in search of hope. He hadn't eaten in days and had recently lost his job due to company layoffs. Rajiv looked at the wall, hesitating. A warm wool sweater caught his eye. His jacket was too thin for the storm. He took the sweater gently and folded his own coat underneath it, adding a small note in return. One day, I will return this kindness. As he turned to leave, Maria, one of the original students who painted the first handprints, happened to walk by. She recognized the look of sadness and gratitude on Rajiv's face. Without hesitation, she offered him a hot drink from her thermos and sat beside him on the nearby bench. They didn't talk much, but the silence between them was full of understanding. Back at school, Mr. Emerson's English class was abuzz. The students were no longer just learning English. They were living it, writing essays about their experiences, journaling their daily observations at the wall, and crafting short stories inspired by the people they met. Luca, the quiet student who had barely spoken at the start of the school year, was now the most passionate voice in the room. He had begun writing poetry. His latest was titled Where Walls Speak Softly. Even other teachers noticed the change in students' confidence and motivation. One history teacher remarked, "They're not just memorizing lessons anymore. They're connecting with life in a new way." But as the wall's reputation grew, so did the number of people visiting it. Some came with good intentions, leaving clothes or food. Others began treating it like a dumping ground, dropping off broken appliances or torn clothes too. Ruined to use, the students were heartbroken. One morning, they arrived to find the wall littered with trash, soggy cardboard boxes, and the torn sign reading, "Take only what you need." Tears filled Maria's eyes as she bent to clean the mess. "This isn't what we wanted," she whispered. Mr. Emerson, who had joined them to check on the wall that morning, placed a hand on her shoulder. "Sometimes when something beautiful begins to shine, it attracts both light and shadows," he said softly. "It's up to us to protect it." That afternoon, a student council meeting was called. Students, teachers, and neighbors all gathered in the school auditorium to discuss how to protect the wall and preserve its original purpose. Ideas flowed freely: a weekly cleaning schedule, a wall guardian group of volunteers, clear signage in multiple languages explaining what was and wasn't allowed, a storyboard with rotating student stories and poems to explain the wall's history. Even Rajiv, who had found hope through the wall, attended the meeting. He had since found part-time work and offered to help clean the wall every weekend. "We may not control what others do," he said, "but we can lead by example." Together, the community gathered for a weekend cleanup and repainting event. The wall, once chipped and stained, was brought back to life with new colors, stronger messages, and a firm sense of unity. The original handprints were repainted in brighter shades, and beneath them, new ones joined small hands and large, wrinkled hands and smooth ones, all representing the expanding circle of kindness. Together, the community gathered for a weekend cleanup and repainting event. The wall, once chipped and stained, was brought back to life with new colors, stronger messages, and a firm sense of unity. The original handprints were repainted in brighter shades, and beneath them, new ones joined small hands and large, wrinkled hands and smooth ones, all representing the expanding circle of kindness. At the center, a new phrase was painted in large, bold letters: "Kindness is a language everyone understands." It was a phrase Mr. Emerson had shared in class once, and now it stood as the wall's heart. As night fell, Lanterns were hung around the wall, casting a soft glow over the fresh paint. Music played gently from a nearby speaker, just a few instrumental tunes selected by the students. The wall had become more than a project. It had become a symbol, a living story written not just in words, but in acts of compassion. Luca read his poem aloud. Maria stood with her little brother, helping him add his own tiny handprint. Mr. Emerson watched with quiet pride. The painted wall stood strong, weathered by rain, faded by sun, but renewed again and again by the hearts of those who believed that small acts of kindness could change the world. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. The wall's transformation from a forgotten boundary to a symbol of collective kindness brought with it unexpected magic. Each coat of paint, each hung garment, and every encouraging note carried not just color, but care. Soon, the town began to experience something they hadn't in years, a genuine sense of community. Every morning, Nita made it her habit to stroll past the wall before school. She would stop briefly to tuck handwritten notes into the hope pocket, a fabric pouch someone had stitched onto the wall, to hold letters and drawings. Hers always started with, "Dear friend, if you're reading this," before continuing with short, hopeful messages that anyone could relate to. At first, she wasn't sure anyone even noticed, but one day, a new note appeared written in different handwriting, but with the same opening line. "Dear friend, if you're reading this, I want you to know I kept going today because of you." Nita felt her chest tighten with joy. Her words had reached someone. More pockets were sewn on. Students brought clean, used notebooks and pencil sets wrapped in string. Others added scarves and socks for cold days. Even Ravi, the shopkeeper who was once known for shooing kids away from his steps, placed a thermos of hot tea beneath the wall every morning. Anyone who needed warmth could take a SIP. Word of the wall spread beyond the neighborhood. Local artists arrived to paint murals that reflected the community's spirit, trees growing from hands, children helping one another, the elderly being offered umbrellas in the rain. One artist painted a huge pair of outstretched hands on either end of the wall, palms up, as if ready to lift the entire town. The mayor, who had once seen the wall as a pointless eyesore, now visited often. With the town council's blessing, she allocated funds to maintain the wall's cleanliness and provide small shelters beside it, wooden boxes where people could donate canned food, shoes, or books. One foggy morning, something unusual appeared. A mirror. It was framed with painted wooden slats and bore the words, "You are someone's reason to smile." Children stopped to look. Teenagers, too. Some laughed, made funny faces. Others grew quiet, seeing themselves with a new kind of clarity. The mirror became a fixture not of vanity, but of validation. Nita's teacher, Mr. Basu, started bringing his class to the wall. Once a month, he turned the visits into lessons on empathy and community service. The students would paint a new corner of the wall, read the posted notes, and brainstorm what else they could contribute. Kindness is a subject, he told them, and you are all top of the class. A boy named Orman, who rarely spoke in class, stood quietly during one visit. He didn't interact, didn't paint, but the next week he returned on his own and left a package of small figurines, tiny animals made from clay. Each was placed inside a small plastic bag with a note. "Take me when you need courage." The wall began to breathe with personality. It was no longer just a project, it was alive. One evening, as Nita was heading home, she noticed an older woman sitting beneath the wall. Her face was lined with time, and her eyes seemed tired. At first, Nita hesitated, but then she walked over and offered her a handmade card she had brought with her that day. On the front was a simple drawing of two hands holding a heart. The woman looked at it for a long moment before tears welled in her eyes. "You have no idea how much I needed this," she whispered. Nita sat with her for a while, not needing to say anything more. From that day on, the woman whose name was Shanta became a regular at the wall. She taught the younger children how to make friendship bracelets and told stories about her youth, making everyone laugh with her dramatic expressions and unexpected voices. The wall had given her a second purpose, and in return, she gave it joy. By now, every inch of the original grey was gone. What remained was a mosaic of handprints, messages, art, and gifts, a living monument to connection. Then one day, a storm hit. The rains were relentless. Winds howled through the alleyways, tearing down clothes and soaking letters. When the townspeople emerged the next morning, they gasped. Much of the wall's offerings were gone. The paint was streaked, and the little shelf of books had collapsed. A few of the murals were ruined. But instead of sadness, something else happened. People started arriving, one by one, armed with paint brushes, brooms, nails, and umbrellas. They got to work. Children rescued soggy notes and laid them out to dry. Teenagers rehung the clothing, and adults reinforced the structures. Even the mayor arrived, rolling up her sleeves to help repaint the base. Within 2 days, the wall looked more beautiful than ever. The new mural showed a rising sun, a phoenix from the ashes, and a seedling pushing through the soil. It was more than just a wall again, it was a testament. By now, visitors were coming from other cities just to witness this act of collective kindness. Schools from across the region began their own Wall of Kindness programs, and Nita, once a quiet girl with a sketchbook, was invited to speak at youth conferences and write about the wall's story. She didn't see herself as a leader. She often told others, "I just picked up a brush." The town painted the future. But it wasn't just the town. It was her heart that started it all. As the wall's reputation grew, so did its ability to touch hearts beyond the narrow street of Mr. Rafiq's bakery. Videos were posted online of people leaving gifts, handwritten notes, and small care packages. A local news station came to interview the team, and viewers from across the city wrote in, expressing how deeply moved they were by the simple, beautiful idea. One letter stood out among the rest. It came from a teacher in a distant neighborhood named Miss Layla. She had seen the wall on a social media post shared by a former student. In her message, she described how some of her students came from low-income families, struggling to meet their daily needs. The story of the Wall of Kindness had moved her so much that she printed pictures of the wall and shared the idea with her class. Inspired by her students' enthusiasm, Miss Lele and her class decided to build their own wall of kindness at their school. Within a week, they painted a small mural beside the school gate, added hangers beneath it, and began a kindness drive. The children brought gently used shoes, jackets, and books to contribute. Parents and neighbors joined in, and soon the school wall was bursting with life, kindness, and color. When Yasmin received the letter, she read it aloud at the next team gathering. The room fell quiet, not with silence, but with awe. What had started as a local act of compassion was now echoing across communities. There was something incredibly humbling about the idea that their little wall had sparked more. Emboldened by this ripple effect, Yasmin proposed an ambitious idea: why not build more walls? What if, she said, we turned this into a movement? Every neighborhood, every district, what if they all had their own wall of kindness? The idea wasn't just bold, it was powerful. Rafiq, once wary of even having people gather near his bakery, now sat at the head of the table, smiling like a proud father. We'd need more volunteers, more paint, more permission from wall owners. But I think we can do it. It wasn't just the youth who volunteered now. Grandparents, shopkeepers, retired artists, and even city workers showed interest. The first community meeting drew a crowd of nearly 100 people, each of them excited by the prospect of bringing a little light into darker corners of the city. During that meeting, ideas blossomed. A carpenter offered to build wooden boxes beside the walls for storing books and school supplies. A musician suggested adding instruments and hosting small performances to raise funds for maintenance. A retired teacher pledged to run reading hours near the wall for children who couldn't afford school. Soon, Yasmin and her friends formed a community collective called the Kindness Circle. Their motto was simple: one wall, infinite kindness. The team began scouting for new locations: parks, libraries, outer walls of clinics, and even blank corners in rundown neighborhoods. They contacted building owners for permission and worked with the city to ensure each wall was safe, respectful, and maintained. But not everyone welcomed the idea. In one neighborhood, a landlord flat out refused to allow any painting on his property. "I don't want people loitering around here," he scoffed. "They'll bring mess and noise." In another district, someone spray-painted over a freshly painted wall of kindness, covering it in black. The team was disheartened. Yasmin stared at the vandalized wall in silence, paintbrush dangling in her hand. Rafiq stepped forward. "When we planted seeds of kindness," he said gently, "we never expected weeds not to grow to. But we still plant. Because beauty is always worth the risk." With that, he took a roller, dipped it in fresh sky blue paint, and started covering the damage. The others followed. By the end of the day, the wall was repainted. But this time, they added something new to the mural: a small dove in the corner, carrying an olive branch, and below it, the words, "Even when the world turns dark, let's keep painting it with light." The movement was growing, but with growth came challenges no one had fully anticipated. Not all walls were as welcoming as the first. Some neighborhoods were skeptical, some residents indifferent, and some even hostile. It was clear that kindness was not just about giving, it was about listening, understanding, and healing old wounds. Yasmin and the Kindness Circle decided to take a new approach. Instead of just painting walls, they began organizing art workshops in community centers, schools, and even vacant lots. The goal was to invite people not just to paint but to share stories, fears, and hopes through creativity. In one workshop held in a crowded hall, an elderly man named Mr. Singh sat quietly. He had lost his wife years ago and rarely spoke. But as Yasmin encouraged everyone to paint a symbol of hope, his brush moved hesitantly at first, then with growing confidence when he stepped back. The group saw a delicate lotus flower emerging, a symbol of rebirth and resilience. A group of teenagers, some from troubled backgrounds, painted a mural of intertwined hands rising toward a bright sun. They told stories of family struggles and dreams for peace. Their voices, once lost in silence, found strength in color and shape. Yasmin noticed something extraordinary happening. People were bonding not just through the wall, but through shared experience. The walls became living journals of their lives. One day, after a particularly moving session, Yasmin sat with a young girl named Amina. She was shy, with wide eyes that flickered with uncertainty. "Why do you paint?" Yasmin asked gently. Amina looked down at her hands, paint splattered and trembling. "Because it's the only way I can say what I feel." Yasmin nodded. "Sometimes words aren't enough. Art can carry what our hearts can't speak." Amina smiled faintly. "Maybe one day my picture will help someone else." And it would. The Kindness Circle started gathering these stories, photos, and artworks to create a traveling exhibition called Walls That Speak. It was more than an art show. It was a celebration of human connection and the power of kindness to heal wounds both seen and unseen. The exhibition traveled to neighboring towns, schools, and even city halls. Visitors stood quietly before each mural and photo. Many moved to tears by the stories behind the colors. One visitor was a local councilman who had initially opposed the wall movement. He admitted later, "I didn't understand, but seeing this, I see the heart behind it." Back in Marigold Bend, the original wall remained the heart of the movement. New murals were added regularly, reflecting current hopes and struggles. The painted tree now had blossoms in every season, symbolizing resilience through change. The wall no longer belonged to a few, it belonged to everyone. The painted wall stood at the heart of Marigold Bend, no longer just bricks and mortar, but a living testament to the power of kindness and community. Over time, it became a place where stories lived, stories of struggle, hope, healing, and love. Yasmin and the Kindness Circle continued their work, but they knew the true strength of the movement was in the people, the givers and takers, the painters and the dreamers. The wall had given a voice to those who often felt unheard and a warm hand to those who felt alone. One chilly autumn evening, the community gathered around the wall for the annual Kindness Festival. Lanterns hung from nearby trees, casting a soft glow on the vibrant murals. Music filled the air, a mix of old folk songs and new tunes created by local youth inspired by the wall's message. Children ran with painted faces, their laughter weaving through the crowd. Elders shared stories of the town's past and hopes for its future. Volunteers served warm food and tea, reminding everyone that kindness was not just an idea, but an action. Yasmin took the stage to speak. She looked out at the sea of faces, some familiar, some new, and felt a deep sense of gratitude. This wall started as a simple idea, she said. A place where people could give without judgment and receive without shame. But it grew into something much greater. It became a home for kindness, a bridge between hearts. She paused as the crowd applauded softly. Remember, the wall may be painted, but the true color comes from each of us. Every small act of compassion adds a brushstroke to the bigger picture. Our kindness is the legacy we leave. The festival ended with a ritual collective painting of a new mural on a freshly built section of the wall. Everyone added their handprints, names, or simple symbols that represented what kindness meant to them. That night, as Yasmin walked home beneath the stars, she smiled. The painted wall was no longer just a place, it was a movement, a story that would live on long after any of them were gone. Years later, the wall inspired other towns, cities, and countries. Walls were painted across continents, each telling unique stories but connected by the same thread: kindness. And in Marigold Bend, the painted wall stood strong, whispering its message to every passerby. Take what you need. Leave what you can. Kindness is a language everyone understands.